Hey folks, this is JR with DIY Prepper. Welcome to the channel, and today we're going to be talking about ways that you can stay warm during a winter power outage. And now is actually a very good time to prepare for this if you haven't done so already. Stores are starting to get their winter items in stock, but it's still warm enough in a lot of places that most people aren't worried about cold weather yet. This gives you a window of opportunity to pick up the things that you need before other folks realize that they may need it too. One of the best ways to stay warm during a winter power outage is to use a propane heater. Buddy heaters are a popular option for this. The one I have here is just the regular Buddy. They have the Big Buddy, which can produce more heat. But this will last between 3 and 6 hours using one of those 1-pound propane bottles, and it can last between 48 and 110 hours using a 20-pound propane tank. And how long it'll last will depend on the temperature setting that you have the device on. If you want to use a 20-pound propane tank with a heater like this, of course you're going to need an adapter hose for it, but you're also going to need a fuel filter as well. It prevents oil and other contaminants from that fuel line from entering into your heater and gumming things up. And filters like this one should be replaced every year. This particular heater has a regulator built into it, so you won't need a hose like this one. It's also important to know that heaters like this can get a little bit finicky when you try to use them with a 20-pound propane tank. In addition to having the right hose and fuel filters, you also need to turn on the gas very slowly. The reason for this is that if you try to turn it on too fast at the propane tank, it's going to overwhelm the regulator inside of the heater itself, and it might last for a few minutes, then kind of just sputter and shut down. But if you turn on the gas very slowly, allow the hose to fill gradually with that propane, it's going to be a lot easier on the heater, and it's probably going to work a lot better for you. Keeping a larger propane cylinder inside of your house is considered a big no-no. So you may want to get a larger hose than what I did. This is just a 5-foot hose. They make a 12-foot one as well. And this would allow you to run the hose through maybe like a cracked window so that you can keep that propane tank outside. If you do that, you probably want to take a piece of scrap lumber and set it in the window so it doesn't close on that hose and pinch or damage it. That's also going to have the added benefit of giving you a little bit of ventilation, which is always important when using a heater like this. Kerosene heaters are an alternative to propane, but you need to make sure that you have a way that you can get affordable fuel in bulk. Also, make sure that you use that fuel before it goes bad, because kerosene does not have an indefinite shelf life like propane does. But anytime you're using heaters like these or anything else that has an open flame, have operational carbon monoxide alarms and smoke detectors nearby. Keep fresh batteries in them, have plenty of spares, and then also have a fire extinguisher somewhere where you don't even have to open a door to retrieve it. Just have it there sitting out, so if something goes wrong, then you can put that fire out as quickly as possible. If you have a decent sized gas generator and a transfer switch, then you can run entire circuits in your home, including one that has an electric space heater plugged into it. And having a transfer switch and being able to plug that directly into the wall is very important, because those things, they can pull a lot of amps and they can easily overheat things like extension cords and power strips, and could cause a fire. Gas generators really are a better choice for running appliances like these, since they'll stay running as long as you have fuel. Dual or tri-fuel generators are a much better option for preppers than one that just runs on one type of fuel, because first of all, it gives you options like if you can't find a particular fuel source at any given time, then you can use one of the others. Or also, it could be a mechanical issue. You can't get it started using gas, but you might be able to hook it up to a propane tank and get it started that way. And while solar generators are good for a lot of things, you won't be able to use them to run space heaters. Now, to be fair, a decent sized solar power station, one that has a 1 kilowatt hour capacity or larger, a lot of those can start electric space heaters and keep them running for a little while. But most of those space heaters, they use around 1500 watts. So if you have a 1 kilowatt hour power station, you're going to go through that entire capacity in less than an hour using most space heaters out there. And that's because anything that uses just electricity to heat something like a room, it's going to use a lot of energy. And for that reason, if you have a solar generator but you don't have a gas generator, I would strongly recommend getting something like a propane or kerosene heater like what we talked about earlier. One thing that a solar generator can run for a decent amount of time is an electric blanket, particularly those that use a 12-volt plug. Those use maybe around like 50 or 55 watts. So if you have a 1 kilowatt-hour power station, those will last for almost 20 hours. But when it comes to gas generators, you really need to exercise some caution and common sense when you're running those devices. For example, they need to be around 25 feet away from your home with the exhaust pointed away from your house. Also, you want to keep things like gas cans and propane tanks away from that exhaust and far enough away from the generator that they're not a fire hazard. Also, for the love of all things good and decent, don't try to run the thing in your house. And yes, that includes your garage as well. Don't stick it right in front of the garage with the garage door open and then run the generator. Close the garage door, keep the generator that 20-25 feet away from your house so that carbon monoxide and other fumes don't get inside of your home. And it goes without saying that if you're using heaters, a generator, or anything else that requires a fuel source, you need to make sure that you have plenty of fuel for them. This is especially true when dealing with cold weather power outages, since bad road conditions may prevent you from being able to get out and purchase more. If you plan on using firewood and a wood stove or your fireplace, make sure that you have plenty of that as well. Now, propane, kerosene, and electric heaters run on a generator will all do a good job heating entire rooms up to a fairly comfortable level, but you can also use smaller items, things like candles and oil lamps, to heat smaller areas. They're not going to make them toasty warm like those other methods will, but they could prevent you from freezing to death. Probably the safest way to utilize candles would be a candle lantern. This one is the Candelier by Yuko, and it can produce 5,000 BTUs of heat. And it also has a plate on top that you can use to heat things like cans of soup or chili. Hurricane lanterns are a good choice if you want to use an oil lamp. And these are going to be a little bit safer than table oil lamps because the flame is completely enclosed, and the base on these larger hurricane lanterns is going to be a lot wider, so they're going to be more difficult to knock over. You can place these in front of a mirror to reflect light back towards you, or you could use a cookie sheet covered in aluminum foil for this also. Just be sure to not place them anywhere near things like curtains, paper, or anything else that could catch on fire. House fires increase dramatically during power outages, especially those that happen in winter, and this is because people are using alternative or experimental light and heating methods that they're not really familiar with, and they just don't exercise good safety practices. Making your living space smaller is another good way to help you and your loved ones stay warm. If you've ever been camping in cold weather, you know that bringing a large tent along is a recipe for just complete misery because it's a lot harder to heat a large space than it is a smaller one. Start by moving everybody into one room of your house. Interior rooms, they're a good choice for this because there's a lot of airspace between where they are and the outside of your home. But there's a lot of houses like ours that don't really have an interior room that's big enough to hold everybody. Like really the only interior spots in my house that aren't on an exterior wall are just tiny little closets. So in situations like these, consider a room on the south side of your home. The south side of your house, it's gonna, in general, receive more sunlight than other places on your home, unless, of course, the sunlight's being blocked by trees. And also close doors to rooms that you won't be using. Rooms that have carpet are going to be a better choice than those that don't because carpet can act as an insulating layer between you and the cold floor. If you have a house that doesn't have carpet in any rooms, then you might be able to take area rugs from maybe a different room in the house, or just spread out things like blankets, towels, or clothing on the floor to at least give you a little bit of a barrier. And also, you want to avoid sleeping directly on the floor since this can suck a lot of heat just right out of your body. So utilizing things like beds, even like sleeping mats for camping, or stealing the cushions off of your couch and moving them into a different room can get you off the floor and help you stay warm. Taping clear plastic over windows can provide airspace that will reduce the amount of heat that you lose because of those windows. And using clear plastic will allow sunlight to pass through, which can help heat your home as well. When you're doing this, I recommend using some rather thick painter's tape. It's just going to be a lot easier to work with, and it's also not as likely to damage your paint when you have to pull all of that down. And of course, at night, you can cover those windows with things like curtains or even blankets to give you even more insulation. Setting up a tent inside your house is another option. Just be sure that if you're setting it up on something like a tile floor, that you put blankets or something else at the bottom of the tent to give you a little bit of an insulating barrier. And now is also a good time to perform some basic maintenance on your home to prevent cold air from getting inside. Checking the weather stripping on your doors and windows can help save you money on your energy bills and stay warmer during a power outage. If you come across this video and you're already dealing with a cold weather power outage, you can do things like roll up towels, stick them at the bottom of the door, or use the painter's tape that I showed a second ago along the sides of your doors and your windows to prevent drafts from getting into those spaces as well. Another important maintenance thing to take care of is have your chimney inspected to ensure that your fireplace is safe to use. And that's important to do whether your fireplace is wood burning or runs on natural gas. You don't want there to be a bird's nest or something like that in there that catches on fire and burns your house down. Now, if you know you're not going to use your fireplace and you're already in a power outage, then you can use a blanket or plastic sheeting to cover it up so drafts don't enter in from there. If you're using something like a wood stove, make sure it's in good shape and its vent pipe isn't blocked by something like a wasp's nest. Food's another thing that you can use to help you stay warm during a power outage. Of course, things like hot soups and chilies, they're going to help. Also, coffee, since we tend to drink it hot most of the time, is going to help, but that caffeine can also kind of boost your metabolism and help heat your body from the inside that way. Also, hot peppers, things like cayenne, jalapenos, when you eat those, it boosts your circulation, which helps heat your body up also. Then other things like nuts, anything that has a high fat content or a lot of carbs, that's gonna help your body heat itself also. Then how you cook your food can help you stay warm. Having indoor safe cooking methods like a butane stove or an alcohol stove, that can allow you to have an open flame at least for a few minutes while you're cooking. I wouldn't recommend using these as heaters themselves, but if you have a way to cook that's safe to use indoors, then that'll at least take some of the strain off of things like heaters or maybe oil lamps, whatever else you have. In addition to heating your environment, you also need to do everything you can to keep your body itself warm. Doing things like just simple exercises can help keep your blood flowing, which will help. Then wearing layers is another very important thing to do because you can fine-tune your comfort level and your body's temperature by adding layers if you're too cold, taking them away if you get too hot. And if you're struggling keeping your legs warm, then something you can do is just double up on fleece pajama bottoms. Now, of course, dedicated real cold weather like outdoor camping, hunting clothes, those are going to be far preferable to that. But if you don't have them because you wouldn't use them very often, or if you can't afford some of the more expensive things, then doubling up on those fleece pajama bottoms can definitely help you stay warm. Just don't get them wet because they'll be worthless after that. Prevent heat from exiting your body from your neck and your head area, so have things like hats, scarves, or even a wool face mask like this one. All of those can be very helpful. And if that's not enough, you can take other insulating materials, things like paper, and stuff them in between the layers of your clothes. Don't overdo it because if you stuff things too tight like a sausage, that's going to take away that airspace, which is really what helps you stay warm. And if you live with others or have pets, then huddling for warmth is an option also. Then there's other things, like you can use hand warmers like these. They won't last forever, but if you have a decent stock of them, they can last a little while. Hot water bottles, and it doesn't have to be a medical one like this. You can take just warm water, maybe you heat it up on your stove, or maybe you have something like a rocket stove so you can melt snow outside. Wait for it to cool down to temperature that this can handle, pour it in there. Then you can stick this in your sleeping bag or even like just your camping water bottle. You can do that with that as well, provided it doesn't leak. And if you have a solar generator that can run a microwave, then you can use those bean bag heating pads to maybe keep in your bed, keep in your sleeping bag to help you stay warm that way. About this time last year, I did a video that was lessons learned from the 2021 Texas ice storm, and you can check that out by clicking here. Thank y'all for stopping by. Y'all have a good one.